Hey everyone, let's take a look at Rick Grimes' journey through the main Walking Dead show, from Georgia to hospital all the way to that CRM helicopter ride, the bridge explosion. This will be an animated map, but disclaimer on this, not every place or community was given an exact location, and the distances between each are fuzzy. This map journey is just approximate. School hadn't started back long before Officer Rick Grimes was shot while on duty. His partner Shane Walsh goes to tell Rick's wife Lori, who was picking her son Carl up from school. Rick wakes up weeks later from a coma to find a deserted hospital and lots of dead people. Rick had awakened into a zombie apocalypse. Rick manages to go back to his neighborhood. He meets a man, Morgan.
Sit down before you fall down.
And they go to the police station.
You're a good man, Rick.
We'll be approaching Atlanta on Highway 85.
Rick ends up heading into Atlanta, looking for Lori and Carl. There he meets Glenn and some other survivors. Rick is taken to the quarry camp. It's there he finds Lori, Carl, and his partner and friend, Shane. Rick goes back to Atlanta and then back to quarry camp, but quarry camp is compromised, so they all head out onto the road toward the CDC in Atlanta.
Rick Grimes. Dr. Edwin Jenner.
Leaving the now destroyed CDC, Rick and his family and the group of survivors head to Fort Benning. But soon along the journey, the highway's jammed. The RV breaks down, and Sophia goes missing. Carl gets shot accidentally by a hunter from a nearby farm. The farm is Herschel's, and he is a vet. He may be able to help Carl. They all end up at Herschel's farm. Rick strays from the farm a couple of times. He goes into town to get Herschel.
I hear Nebraska's nice.
And then 18 miles out with the captured Randall. Rick finds out Lori is pregnant with Shane's child. Shane dies at the farm, but the farm gets overrun.
I don't know what happened, Rick. They just keep coming. It's like a plague. They're everywhere.
Rick and the group are on the run again, scavenging where they can. They eventually come across the prison. Lori dies in childbirth, but the child lives. Carl names her Judith. Rick travels to Woodbury to rescue Glenn and Maggie, and then back to the prison. At one point, Rick, Carl, and Michonne go back to his hometown. He expects to get some weapons there. That's where he finds Crazy Morgan.
I mean, you said you would turn on your radio every day at dawn.
He gets the dirty jobs done.
Rick attends a meeting with the governor set up by Andrew.
I thought you'd take responsibility.
Knowing the governor will attack, Rick sets up an ambush plan at the prison to overpower the governor and his people. Rick then chases the governor till he finds the massacre of the Woodbury citizens. Rick then returns to Woodbury, bringing survivors to the prison. After a sickness breaks out, Carol is banished by Rick. He takes her to a neighborhood near the prison.
You're gonna survive out here.
Eventually, the prison is lost. Most of the group gets separated. Rick and Carl end up in a neighborhood and reunite with Michonne. Rick narrowly escapes a bad group led by Joe. Out on the road, Joe catches up to Rick, but Rick takes his group out. Daryl is reunited with Rick.
You're my brother.
Now with Daryl, Rick, Carl, and Michonne head down the tracks to Sanctuary for All, Terminus. Terminus is a dead end, another bad group. Most of Rick's group are captured there. Rick fights his way out after also being captured. They end up, with Carol's help, destroying Terminus. While on the move, Rick comes across Gabriel and his church. Eventually, Daryl and a new character, Noah, come to get Rick for help. 2 members of their group have been captured and taken to Atlanta, Beth and Carol. Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. Not everyone survives. After Rick talks to Noah, they decide to head toward Richmond, Virginia.
Beth wanted to go with him. She wanted to get him there.
To check out his subdivision.
It's a long trip.
Rick and the group travel several states, from Georgia to South Carolina to North Carolina, and then to Virginia. Leaving everyone else about 10 miles out, Rick, Noah, and a few others go to check out Wiltshire Estates, Noah's old subdivision.
How far out?
5 miles.
Rick loses Tyrese during the venture and does not find a safe haven. Noah's home was destroyed. Rick's group are tired, hungry, not much luck on scavenging. Rick has grown to be untrusting of people and things. After taking refuge in a barn and after a huge storm, Aaron reveals himself to Rick to come to Alexandria. If Rick had a home in the apocalypse, it would be Alexandria. He will remain based there until his exit from the show.
I want everyone to hear me, okay? Rick and his people are part of this community now. As equals.
Rick ventures out to an abandoned house where he hid a gun, and Carl shows up. He ventures out to the house again with Carol and Daryl as they discuss some plans. Turmoil inside the walls with Pete leads to Pete's execution by Rick just as Morgan arrives. Rick and Morgan go out near a quarry to bury Pete. There he finds a volatile situation with thousands of walkers trapped in a quarry about to escape it. And it would put Alexandria in danger. Rick mobilizes the community to reroute the horde. He fights off some bad guys called the Wolves, and while fighting off a horde inside the walls of Alexandria, Carl gets his eye shot out. Rick and the others save Alexandria, but supplies are weak. Rick and Daryl venture out for supplies
Paul Rovia,
and meet Jesus.
but my friends used to call me Jesus.
After capturing Jesus and returning to Alexandria, Rick and Michonne's relationship begins. Jesus tells Rick it's a much bigger world and introduces him to Hilltop.
Our supplies, our crops, our livestock, it goes to the Saviors.
A menacing group called the Saviors have been terrorizing Hilltop and nearby communities. Rick and the gang say they will eliminate the Saviors in return for supplies.
We kill them all.
Rick leads a team to the satellite compound, killing all the Saviors there. Back at Alexandria, Rick is told Carol left. Morgan goes to look for her as well as Rick. Morgan eventually asks Rick to return to Alexandria, and he will continue the search for Carol. Rick, back at Alexandria, heads toward Hilltop in the RV with a pregnant and sick Maggie. The Saviors have all the roads blocked, and Rick doesn't make it to Hilltop. Rick realizes that the satellite compound was not all of the Saviors, and that Negan lives.
You're Rick, right? I'm Negan.
Negan puts them in a lineup to teach them a lesson. Negan kills Abraham and Glenn and forces Rick and his group to become slaves to the Saviors to provide them food and supplies. Daryl is taken by Negan's group to their home called the Sanctuary. Rick and Aaron go out on a supply run, finding very little. Upon arriving back at Alexandria, the Saviors are there. Spencer and Olivia die, while Eugene is taken because they find out he can make bullets. Rick has decided it's time to fight back. He heads to Hilltop to tell Maggie they have to get ready to fight. Daryl has escaped the sanctuary and reunited with Rick at Hilltop. Jesus tells them about the Kingdom, another community under Negan's terror that may help Rick fight back.
Who dares to trespass?
At the Kingdom, the leader Ezekiel tells Rick he does not want to join, for worry of his people and a deal that's already in place with the Saviors. Morgan and Carol are also there. Ezekiel allows Daryl to stay there to hide from Negan. Heading home, Rick finds some explosives, and with Michonne, kills some walkers on the highway. Back at Alexandria, Rick is confronted by Simon, right-hand man to Negan. He's looking for Daryl. Gabriel goes missing, and the search for him leads Rick to the junkyard. Rick makes a deal with the leader of the heap, Jadis.
Guns. A lot.
If his group finds more guns, they will help his side in the fight against the Saviors. Rick and Michonne venture out for a few days to scavenge for guns. It was good to have some alone time and moments of peace before all-out war. Heading back, they take a pause and acknowledge the risk ahead. Rick returns to Alexandria and then heads to the junkyard to give Jadis guns. Jada says she needs more before their deal is good. Back at Alexandria, Tara tells Rick about the guns at Oceanside.
I have something to tell you.
Rick gathers people and heads to Oceanside with a plan to take the guns. Tara goes in first, hoping to make peace, but Oceanside refuses, and Rick forcefully takes their guns.
You're not leaving us any?
Nope. See you later, Rachel.
Upon returning to Alexandria, Rick and the group find Dwight in the jail cell.
You want help? I do.
Now, with his wife Sherry gone from the sanctuary, he wants to help Rick take down the Saviors. Dwight informs Rick when Negan's coming back and allows Rick to form a plan to blow him up. Jadis and her people are at Alexandria to help Rick, but Jadis double-crosses Rick. And after a firefight between the Alexandrians versus the Saviors and the Garbage People, Rick is in a lineup again, with Carl about to die. The Kingdom and Hilltop come to Rick's rescue, with Negan and some Saviors getting away. Rick, Maggie, and Ezekiel unite, knowing the war is not over. Rick visits Hilltop, probably while out scavenging for fuel with Carl. This is when Carl sees Sadiq, a lone survivor.
Shot over his head.
Back at Alexandria, Rick prepares his army to head out to the field rendezvous. Michonne and Carl stay at Alexandria. Rick kills a Savior on the way to the field. At the field, he gives a speech and they head out to the sanctuary. Arriving at the sanctuary, Rick's people shoot the guards and pull up to confront Negan and his lieutenants, giving all but Negan a chance to surrender. Rick shoots up the place with a plan to trap the Saviors inside, with a horde of walkers being led there by Daryl and others. Before leaving, Rick takes photos of what he did. Rick's master plan includes other outposts getting attacked also. All-out war was widespread. With the sanctuary surrounded by walkers, Rick and Daryl head to the office outpost to help capture some .50 caliber guns there. While searching for them, Rick kills a Savior, then finds baby Gracie, realizing he just killed her father. Morales shows up, someone Rick knew from the Corey camp where he found Lori and Carl. Morales is a Savior now, though, and ends up dead via bolt from Daryl's crossbow. And the guns are not there. Rick takes more photos of the results of the battle. He gives Gracie to Aaron to take care of.
You sure?
Then Rick and Daryl find a lone Savior survivor who tells them the guns were recently moved to Gavin's outpost, the one the Kingdom's troops are attacking. It's a devastating loss for both the Saviors at Gavin's outpost and the Kingdom. Ezekiel, Jerry, and Carol are the only survivors, but also 2 Savior soldiers who get away with the guns. But Carol sees Rick and Daryl just as the Saviors are getting away, and both go after the guns. The guns get destroyed during a disagreement fight between Rick and Daryl. While Daryl heads back, Rick's plan is to head to the junkyard and get the Garbage People back on his side. On the way there, he sees a helicopter fly overhead.
The Saviors are finished.
At the heap, Rick is captured by Jadis, and she tries to get him bitten, surely to trade to the mysterious helicopter people. Rick turns the tide by killing the walker and almost killing Jadis. She agrees to go to the sanctuary and finish the Saviors. Once there, Rick finds all his snipers dead or missing. The horde is gone, and the Saviors seem to have escaped. Saviors begin shooting, causing the Garbage People to retreat, and Rick is saved by Carol and Jerry. Rick returns to Alexandria and finds it has been bombed by the Saviors. At Rick's house, he looks for Carl and Michonne. Negan is there. The 2 fight until Rick goes through a window and gets away. He finds Michonne, who leads him to a hiding place, a sewer. Many are there, including Judith and Carl, who was bitten. While helping Sadiq, Carl was bitten on the chest, a sure death. Eventually, Rick and Michonne help take Carl to the church, where he ends his life. Rick and Michonne bury Carl, a tremendous loss. Rick's son, but also family to Michonne. They both head out from Alexandria to the junkyard, only to find everyone dead, killed by the escaped Saviors.
You did this. This is because of you.
Only Jada survived. Rick leaves her behind. Carl had written letters before he died, Rick gets on the radio and tells Negan about Carl's death and wishes.
God damn it.
Rick and Michonne arrive at Hilltop, where many had come after the battles. He then leaves out alone and scouts for the Saviors coming, singling out Negan for a revenge attack. Negan gets separated from the other Saviors, and after crashing their vehicles, both him and Rick get into another fight, this time Negan escaping through a window. Back at Hilltop, Rick ponders reading Carl's letter to him. He then questions a captured Savior about some escaped Saviors who had been captured at Satellite Outpost battle. Then he heads out to find them. Rick comes across Morgan, who is out looking for young Henry. Morgan goes with Rick. Once finding the Saviors, Rick and Morgan eliminate them all.
Friday night pizza and cartoons and grandma.
Back at Hilltop, Rick finally reads Carl's letter and then is shown a map provided by Dwight about Negan's next move. Rick plans to end it all and heads out for another battle, not knowing Dwight's been compromised and it's a trap. Part of the trap is Negan leading Rick and his soldiers exactly where he wants them and right into the trap. Out of the blue, the captured Eugene, who had seemingly went all in for Negan, saved the day by making bad bullets, taking out many Saviors before the battle really started. A final fight between Rick and Negan ends with Rick cutting Negan's throat, only then to let a doctor save him, much to Maggie's protest.
No, he killed Glenn!
Rick sits at the tree, finally taking it all in, more so the death of his son. A year and a half later, Rick is at Alexandria with Michonne and Judith, enjoying the peace they established. Rick ventures with the others to Washington, D.C. to get seeds and supplies. On the return toward the sanctuary and the kingdom, they find the bridge has been caved in by a horde of walkers passing through. During the detour, a wagon gets stuck and a boy from Hilltop dies. Rick and some others make it to the sanctuary, where Daryl has been in charge of the remaining Saviors. It is not going well with morale, nor do the crops grow well there. Rick goes to Hilltop and asks Maggie for more supplies and help. While there, Gregory is hanged for trying to kill Maggie. Rick has set up bridge camp to rebuild the bridge between the communities. Saviors provide most of the labor, but tensions are very high. A few Saviors have gone missing.
Mother Goose.
Yeah, no offense, but your call signs suck.
A horde of walkers fail to get redirected and Aaron loses an arm. Back at Alexandria, Rick is reading to Judith when news of a dead Savior comes.
Someone definitely took him out.
Rick arrives at bridge camp just as tempers boil. A talk with Daryl shows not many are on Rick's save the Saviors mentality. Another Savior goes missing, leading to all Saviors abandoning bridge camp. Rick gets word that Maggie is heading to Alexandria to kill Negan. Daryl offers to ride him there on his bike, but passes the turnoff. When Rick questions him, it leads to a fight, with the two rolling into a large hole. In the hole, Rick learns that Oceanside was killing Saviors for revenge. Daryl wanted Maggie to get her justice as they were.
You're chasing something for him that ain't meant to be, man.
Shots are heard at bridge camp. Once escaping the hole, Rick tries to lead the horde away from the bridge, while Daryl goes for help. But Rick runs into another horde, which scares his horse, throwing Rick onto a piece of rebar.
What is your wound?
Severely injured, Rick is able to get back on the horse and lead the horde away. He hallucinates former locations and friends along the way.
You know something, Rick? It is something, isn't it?
He realizes the bridge may be the only way to stop the walkers, thinking it would collapse as they crossed. So Rick heads back there. As they cross, the bridge is actually holding.
It's gonna hold.
Rick sees some dynamite, a way to destroy the bridge, saving the communities. As Daryl and others arrive, Rick realizes his love for his family and pulls the trigger.
I found him.
Later we see Jadis, or Anne, as she finds Rick on the riverside and takes him with her on a mysterious helicopter.